No,
Fudge.
they're not as good as Larry's. Okay, so we stream all of our classes on our YouTube channel, our library YouTube channel. So that's what this is right here. So we're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to file in, but we are streaming live. So hello, YouTube. Hola, Señor Ortega.
Hi everybody.
Hello.
How about all? How you been? Good?
Yeah.
Good.
Don't have to hear it, big news, do they?
I should be coming. In fact, I just might decide to do that.
Well, I'm gonna come to
Because I know you said it starts off for people who never use a computer.
Boy, this is really introduced. I wish because I missed that one open house in my neighborhood. And I would have seen, do you think my daughter would? I think it's a
Yeah.
When we have these classes, what time of the day are those the ones that do that during the week?
I have those in the evening in the springtime, but today's class we're going to do a review of all that. So I'll let you know. We're going to start in 2 minutes.
keeping me anxious.
I'll tell you, if I take these classes, I won't have to follow them.
Oh, trust
And
me.
they help.
She will still talk.
This is a good program. I wonder if PowerPoint, the main had one on Genial. Boy, that was interesting. It started in, and she had some good tips. And I wanted her to do that because I struggle. I can't find certain records. I can't find where my rent, one grandmother. And,
You made it? Someone you know made it?
I need to know it. But I don't have, I have to choose a and so that's making it very
Well,
difficult.
even Ancestry.com, I did an extra for even overseas, for when my father came from Hungary, my father's parents came from Hungary. But it had, I put in all my information, when I first got an Ancestry. And they needed that as a person. And then they said, I lived at a certain
I
address,
ordered one
which was.
offline as a donation.
Oh, well, that,
And this is for here.
And then it said my mother was married to Joseph Miyake, but that was her brother, not her husband.
Oh, where
I
is
said,
it?
"So messed up." I had to
I think it's free. Boy, the filing in here. It's got a packed house. It's a full house.
Not quite. Okay, well, we're going to get started. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Ashbach. I'm the computer guy here at East Chicago Public Library. And today, we're going to be talking about media literacy and misinformation. I'd like to thank the American Library Association for a lovely grant they gave me last year and the Foundations of East Chicago for our refreshments. Today, we're going to go 2 hours. We're going to have a guest speaker come in. Michael Puente from Chicago Public Radio is going to be here to talk about the importance of free press in society. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to give you a preview of the fall computer classes that we do here at the library. Okay, and then we're going to get into talking about misinformation. We're going to talk about different types of misinformation, the impact of misinformation on society, and strategies to help combat misinformation, because there's a lot of it out there. I want to let you know that this is a nonpartisan class, so I'm not going to be talking too much about politics unless it's specifically about misinformation in politics. As a library, we try to be nonpartisan, and we try to give information to everybody regardless of politics, for sure. So the first thing I want to talk about is the upcoming classes. Our website, I do have some information that you can grab over on the table over here. We have an outline of today's class. The outline of today's misinformation class, we have a list of all the classes. Okay, so this is a list of all the classes we have coming up in the fall. And this is about our community help desk, which I'll tell you about in a minute. All this information that you're going to see on this is also on the handouts that I give. So this is our website, ecpl.org/classes. And I'll let you give you a view of what that looks like. So basically we do 14 different classes here at the library, and we repeat all 14 of those classes twice a year. Okay? In the springtime, I do them in the evenings because it's starting to get lighter out. So in our other location on Chicago Avenue, at our Pastrick branch location, I'll do those classes in the springtime in the evening, starting at 5:30. So it's every Tuesday from 5:30 to 7:30 at our other location in the spring. In the fall, when it's getting darker, I do them in the afternoons. Okay? I can't do them always in the afternoons because some people work and stuff like that. So in the fall, we have 14 different classes, and it's going to be every Friday until Christmas, and it's going to be at the same time. So it'll be in this room from 1 to 3 in the afternoon every Friday here at the main library. Registration was not required for today. It's just open to anybody who wants to show up. But in the future, I need you to register, because half of the classes that we do are hands-on, on a laptop, on a computer, and we provide the computers here for you. The other half of the classes are lecture only. Okay? So we can fit a lot more people in the lecture only classes, but in the classes that are hands-on on computers, we can only fit 14. So we need to register to get an idea how many people are going to show up. Okay? But I want to show you really quick what our website looks like. Okay, so if you go to our website, ecpl.org/classes, I've got a list of the upcoming classes on a schedule on the website here. I also list the community help desk, which I'll talk about in a minute. The community help desk is one-on-one help every Tuesday and Thursday between 1 and 4 in the afternoon. But every once in a while, like yesterday, my partner had surgery, so I wasn't here. So I didn't have help desk yesterday. So before you come to the library, you can just call to see if help desk is going to happen, or you can just check the library website, and it'll tell you in this schedule here if there's going to be no community help desk. The only thing I have planned, I think I have 1 week in October that I'm going to be on vacation. So there's going to be 1 week in October that I'm not going to have class, and I'm not going to have help desk, but all that will be here. So also on the website, we talk about the upcoming class, We have registration right on the website for these classes. So you can just click here to sign up for the classes. But also, we list all the class tracks. In that blue piece of paper, that's a handout, that is all of the classes that we do here at the library. And basically, we divide them up into 3 different categories. Okay? We're going to start this fall with internet technologies. Okay? We're going to start with a tablets and smartphone class. Okay? And after that, we're going to do introduction to the internet. All these classes are for beginners. So if you've never touched a computer before, this is the place to be. So we introduce you to how the internet works, and we get you used to using a browser, looking at websites and stuff like that. The internet technologies classes, I think there's like 6 or 7 of those. I have one new one coming up this fall, and that's artificial intelligence. Because artificial intelligence is really set to take over the world like the internet did back in the 90s. After we do internet technologies, then we're going to do a 3-part course on basic computer use. Okay? So that's how a desktop computer or a laptop computer works. We start right from the beginning. We start with using a mouse, okay? Getting to know the parts of a computer, how to turn it on even, simple stuff like that. But then over the course of 3 classes, we learn about an operating system. Microsoft Windows, how to use an operating system, and how to manage files that the software on that computer can create. So after a list of internet classes, then we're going to do a 3-part basic computers. Now this starts the hands-on courses. And we're all going to be on a computer starting with these classes here. And after we do a 3-part basic computer class, then we start doing productivity tools. Now, those are more using pieces of software that help people get jobs, using a spreadsheet, using a word processor, and stuff like that. Also online, I have a description of all the classes, plus I give you outlines, and in some cases I'll even put up the presentation that we're seeing in class. The other thing I want to tell you about is we have a YouTube channel, okay, and I keep a link to this YouTube channel on the class's website, and that's what we're streaming to today. So if you sign up for a class and for some reason you can't make it, you can watch it live on YouTube. We stream it live, but then we keep it up on YouTube. So if you want to go back and look again later, there was something you missed or something that didn't make sense, you can go back to the website and you can look at our YouTube channel. So I'm going to show you what our YouTube channel looks like. This is our YouTube channel. So if you've ever used YouTube to look up things, you probably hear people say, please like and subscribe to all my YouTube videos. And the reason is because if you get enough subscribers, more things can open up to you. For example, we needed 50 subscribers on our YouTube page just to be able to stream this live. So we didn't have that many subscribers, then we wouldn't be able to stream this live. So if you don't mind, please subscribe. I am subscribed. But this YouTube channel doesn't just have our classes, it has a lot of other information on it. Lots of people here in the library use our YouTube channel to post story times and information, and some really good information. So.
Oh, we get it.
If you go to our website, ecpl.org/classes, and the name of that website is on the blue handout, then on that page you can get to our YouTube channel by clicking on that link. You can also just go to YouTube and search for East Chicago Public Library, and it's the first result that comes up. So it's pretty easy to find on YouTube. All right. Back to my presentation. can see my notes at the same time. Okay. If there's something we don't cover in class, okay, we have a community help desk here at the library twice a week. That's first come, first served help with anything you need help with. People come in with broken laptops. They come in with new phones that they don't know how to work. I've had people drag in their printer and their desktop to try and get their printer working. All that's fine. Okay, if there's a line of people, we may have to limit you to like 20 or 30 minutes just to keep the line moving. But if there's nobody in line, then, I mean, you're welcome to stay all afternoon with me. So it's free one-on-one help with whatever you need help with. Tuesdays and Thursdays here at the main library from 1 to 4. You can bring in your own devices, but there are no drop-offs. You have to remain with your device at all times. We tried that, it was a mess, so we don't do that anymore. Okay, so before we start this, I want to show you this really cool little video. Oh shit! Oh. This is in Canada.
Hey, what the fuck's going?
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, ça va? Oh non. Hey, you.
So, sorry about the bad language. It actually didn't even sound like a bad word in a French accent.
I can't stand it.
So let's talk about types of false information. The internet is great. The internet is a wonderful tool. Not everything on the internet is real. A lot of what you find on the internet is not true. Okay? So we're going to talk about some of the different things that you can find online that are false. So I remember when I was young, this is funny, because people would tell us stuff, and you just believe it, right? I remember when I was little, I remember people saying, oh, if you see a baby bird that fell out of the nest, don't pick up that baby bird and put it back in the nest, because the mom will smell you on the baby bird, and it'll reject the baby. That is not true at all. Birds don't even really have that good of a sense of smell. That is one of those things that just spread like wildfire when we were young. Okay. Nowadays, we have a smartphone in our hands, most of us, where we can just ask the internet if that is true or not. And there are lots of results saying, no, it's fine to put the baby bird back in the nest if it falls out of the nest. But in all actuality, my mom is here today. Hi, Mom. And my mom helped me with this. Because this came up to me this last summer. Baby bird, we had these little house wrens that come every year and make little nests in the yard. And they sing beautifully, and it's really nice. Well, baby house wren fell out of the nest. So I thought, oh, is that really true? Don't pick up it. No, it's not true. So I put the baby bird back in the nest. It got thrown out of the nest again. What's actually happening is mother birds know if a baby is developmentally not working right, and they'll eject them from the nest to give the other birds that are healthy an advantage. So that's something that does happen. So I think that's probably where this rumor came up, because somebody took a baby bird, put it back in the nest, and then the mom came and threw it out. Right? Well, the mother threw it out the first time because it wasn't developmentally working right. My mother, she has been a bird enthusiast all of her life. She has birds. She's raised parakeets in her house. So when this baby bird came out of the nest, she's retired and at home. I said, hey, would you take this baby bird? So she did. She took the baby bird. She started feeding it by hand. And then she called me just like the next day. She said, this bird should have its eyes open by now. There's something wrong with this bird. A bird this far along, getting feathers like this, should have its eyes open. So that is a good lesson. The mom threw it out of the nest because it wasn't developing correctly. And it gave an advantage to the other birds, who all survived, and they all flew around the yard for about a week and then went on their way. It was really nice. You'll get warts from toads. That was another thing we heard a lot when we were young. No, that's not true. Those are not warts on toads. Warts are from viruses, and toads do not have warts like that. So this is just another example of something we heard when we were little. Swallowing chewing gum. It takes 7 years to digest. Everybody heard that before? That one is one I was told when I was little. And I believed it. But see, nowadays we have the internet and we can go and we can see if that's true or not. And I remember thinking, because I was been a computer guy all my life, I remember thinking when I was about, in like the mid-90s, I was working in Chicago as a computer guy and the internet came out and I thought, well, this is going to be great. Because now, if we have a question about something somebody told us as a kid, or something somebody down the bar said, we can look it up, right? We have the wealth of all of our knowledge at our fingertips now that we have the internet out there. So we're definitely going to get smarter, right? No, it's not what happened at all. Now we use the internet to find things like the earth is really flat, not round, and birds aren't real. Some crazy stuff out there. So I just want everybody to know. TikTok, YouTube, the internet contains all the information. Not just the true information, the fake stuff too. So it's our job to try and parse through this information to see what is true and what is not true. Okay. So, one type of misinformation that is getting a lot of news and press these days is something called a deep fake. Artificial intelligence and computers nowadays can recreate people's voices really, really well. It can also make it look like somebody is saying something that they never said. It's a fake video, and a lot of people are concerned, well, are these going to influence people? And yeah, they probably will. So there's ways to look up whether some of these things are real or not real. This is an example of one deep fake, and if you just search deep fake on YouTube, you'll find all sorts of really entertaining stuff. You'll see people acting like Tom Cruise that look just like Tom Cruise because they computer overlaid his face on some actor who kind of looked like him anyway. You just think it was Tom Cruise. But this is a Joe Biden deepfake that was made as a joke, and I want you to see.
Have I ever told you the story of the magical pistachio? I got lost in the grocery store and couldn't find my way out. But that's when I saw it, a glowing pistachio. It spoke to me and said, "Follow me and I'll lead you to safety." So I followed it and we climbed up shelves and found a secret passage that led me to the bread aisle. And that's how I found my way out of the grocery store, all thanks to the magical pistachio. So if you ever get lost, just remember all you need is a little faith and a magical pistachio to guide you to safety.
Okay. So he never said that, but boy, did it look like he was saying that, right? And it sounded just like him too. So that is an example of a deep fake that people can use to make you think somebody said something when they didn't really say something, all right? Another type of misinformation that's out there are conspiracy theories. Now, conspiracy theories aren't new to the internet. Conspiracy theories have been around a lot longer than the internet. But now, conspiracy theories can spread around a little faster because of the internet. One conspiracy theory that still baffles me a little bit is the flat earth conspiracy theory. If you look online, there are a lot of people, and there's a community of people who think the earth is flat and not round. Well, the earth is round, okay? And there's a lot of reasons we can prove that it's round using science, and we'll talk about that later. When we get in towards the end of class, we're talking about combating misinformation online. As a matter of fact, let me show you. This is there's a documentary from 2018 called Behind the Curve. That this documentary went and talked to some of these people who, it's a community that got together on the internet that believed that the earth was flat and not round, and then they were determined to prove to to the scientists using science that the Earth is actually flat. And I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler on the movie. When they started doing these experiments, they didn't quite go as they expected them to go. It actually went the opposite, kind of proving them wrong. But here's a trailer from this movie.
First time I ever heard about flat earthers was when I was in space last. I can't believe I'm talking about this.
I'm well versed in just about every conspiracy you can think of.
Chemtrails, 9/11.
Did you know they made up dinosaurs?
I completely solved the JFK assassination, which I'll share with you a different day.
But when you get bored enough with normal conspiracies, you're looking for something new.
And then Mark said that he was a member of the Flat Earth Society. And I said, oh, Mark, what are you on to now?
This is what it is.
Excuse me, anyone ever told you the Earth is flat?
I caught his smile, he wasn't buying it. Nobody wants to admit that they've been fooled, but it's happened to every one of us.
If you look on Google Trends, it's like spiky.
There's now flat earth dating sites. I mean, we've got songs.
Why is it expanding the way it is?
Get online, you'll see so-called evidence that seems scientific, and you go, huh, maybe they're onto something there.
Science is having trouble combating what we're doing because they don't know how to address it.
I want to believe this. This doesn't mesh with reality, so don't change my view. Change reality.
Now we're doing an international conference.
It's okay to believe all this is really happening.
In the conference, we want to prove there's no curvature. And if we can do that, it's game over.
And we get to the point where it's accepted.
So that, you can find this, I think it's on Netflix. You can find this online. It's a very good, well-made documentary. It's very interesting, and it talks about this community of people who believe that this fake conspiracy theory that the Earth was actually flat. Birds aren't real. Okay? This is a conspiracy theory going around. Wake up, birds aren't real, and they charge themselves on power lines. Basically, this conspiracy theory says that the government killed all the birds in the late 60s and early 70s and replaced the birds with robots to spy on us. And these birds charge themselves up on the power lines, and birds aren't real. Actually, this is a pretty recent conspiracy theory that everybody who believes in this, they're in on the joke. They know it's not real. They're making fun of other conspiracy theories. And the way they're doing it is they're insisting that birds aren't real. You know, if somebody's going to believe that the Earth is flat and not round, well, why wouldn't you not believe that the birds are all drones sent to spy on us? Now, both the flat Earth and the birds aren't real are, you'd think, who cares if they believe this, right? It's not really hurting anybody. But there are a lot of conspiracy theories out there that can be dangerous, that can cause some bad things. And Pizzagate is one of them. Pizzagate was a conspiracy theory going around about Hillary Clinton and some Democrats about having a child sex ring in the basement of a pizza place in Washington, D.C. And it spread around the internet a lot, okay? And it spread around the internet so much that a gentleman grabbed a rifle and went into, I think it was Cosmic Pizza, I don't remember the name of the pizza place, and demanded to be let into the basement. And he fired off the gun a couple of times in the restaurant, and he got 4 years in prison for it. And I mean, the first thing the employees at this pizza place said was, we don't have a basement. So I don't know what you think's going on here, but we're just serving pizza, right? Reminded me of Pee-wee's Big Adventure when he went all the way down to Pee-wee Herman when he went down to Austin, or to San Antonio, to the Alamo to get his bike out of the basement. Like, we don't have a basement. Anyway, let me show you. This was Pizzagate. So this was a real thing that happened. So this gentleman, Edgar Madison, he saw the conspiracy theories going around all online. He believed it. And so he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought, oh my God, if there's children in that pizza place being molested, you know, somebody's got to do something about this. I want to see what the name of this pizza place is. North Carolina, fired a rifle inside Washington, D.C. pizzeria, Pizzagate. Yeah, I'd watch this video, but it's just going to be a commercial for the first minute and a half, so I'm going to skip it. Okay, so this is another type of misinformation, conspiracy theories.
First time I ever.
Another type of misinformation that I've seen a lot more recently are influencers spreading, yes?
What are influencers? I've been hearing that word a lot.
So influencers are people who create an online YouTube account or an online TikTok account, okay? And what they do is they make little videos of themselves going to visit places or something like that, and they get a lot of followers, a lot of people watching their videos every day, because you can like and subscribe and follow to these things, right? So some of these influencers become popular, you know? They tend to be young, good-looking, charismatic people, but they're just average people. And what they do is they create little online accounts, and if they get enough people following them, well, what happens is they start getting noticed by advertisers. And they think, well, if you have 1 million people looking at your videos every day, well, would you mind selling this supplement or advertising this? So these influencers can turn that into a money-making operation simply by getting noticed by some companies and businesses that want to do this. So, okay, so this is one that I just saw. This hit the news this week. This is washing your vegetables in a dishwasher.
What are you doing? In the dishwasher. Isn't a dishwasher for dishes? Are you freaking kidding me? How many times have you done this so far? So you literally refuse to use the dishwasher for dishes, but it's okay for fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, I think more clean, but so many people want to touch it.
So many people touch the vegetables. So this was something I saw online just this week. Viral tick. So millions of people saw that. And if you looked at the comments, they're like, brilliant idea. Oh my God, oh my goodness, that's just such a great idea washing. Now I don't have to wash all these vegetables myself. Yeah, well, it's a really bad idea. Okay? There are a whole bunch of reasons why you should not do that. And there's a lot of food experts that say there's a clear risk. It's not a good idea. The right way to wash a vegetable is right before you eat it. Even if you have a garden and you think that's pretty clean because it's outside, it's in the garden, it's not going to be pesticides and stuff like that. Just having water on a vegetable like that, even before you put it in the fridge, can invite mold and stuff like that. So they say just keep the vegetable as it is, and then you wash it right before you eat it is the right way to go about it. But there's soap residues in dishwashers and other things like that, and even she was putting vinegar in there instead of soap. They still say that's not a good idea either. Okay, but you know, let's take a look. Dr. Kimberly, so one of the people they talked to was Dr. Kimberly Baker. She's the director of food systems and safety at Clemson University. She's an expert in food safety and how to do this right. So I use TikTok and YouTube, and I do enjoy when I see these, they call them little hacks, where it's like, oh, you can try this, this is a neat idea, you know, and a lot of times they're kind of fun, but they can also be just wrong. They could just be flat out wrong, okay? And it's probably a much better idea to listen to the opinion of Dr. Kimberly Baker, the director of systems and safety at Clemson University, than that woman on TikTok. This was a study that was done with lots of advertisement. This was a study that was done back in March. Nearly half of U.S. adults use Instagram, but there are influencers on Instagram profiting from the spread of misinformation. And these are younger people who are making money from people who are trying to sell supplements and other things. And what they're doing is they're purposely saying that legitimate cures are not legitimate, and that the supplements are going to be the only, and they get a lot of traction, right? The influencers posted contacts that link to products like essential oils and stuff that they falsely cured with cure colds, viruses, and other ailments. And I read the study. It's a very interesting study. But so this is another type of misinformation that goes around quite a bit. I mean, just because somebody has their own TikTok or their own YouTube channel does not necessarily make them an expert in anything. And as a matter of fact, there are people out there who misstate their credentials. They say they're a doctor and they give you information about a vaccine or a cure, when in all actuality they're a doctor of education or a doctor of something else, or sometimes not a doctor at all. So these things are not on their face to be trusted. Okay? Sometimes you can, but in this world of modern technology, we kind of need to double check some of these things before we jump into them. Okay? Hoaxes. This is another type of misinformation that goes around the internet quite a bit. And why do people do this? I don't know. They get a rise out of seeing something that fake they created get shared a lot, maybe. In this case, this was a class thing.
Sparked debates in workplaces across the country. Even George and Elizabeth were going back and forth on this one. Turns out some talented kids nailed a class project and baffled so many of us. Now we hear from those kids, get a closer look at the video, and find out how they did it. Millions have seen it. If you haven't, check it out. Oh. An eagle swoops in and snatches a toddler at a park. Whoa, real or fake? The answer, fake. The clever work of some animation students in Montreal.
I'm shocked. This morning I woke up and I had no idea it would get viral that quick. I knew it had potential, but I didn't know it was spread around the globe.
2 million viewers in the first 24 hours, joining the ranks of other doozy hoaxes to come out of the same school, like this memorable escaped penguin and these miniature flying cars. So how do they do it?
Clearly this is fake. They've shot some video footage here, and they've used over-the-counter software to create a 3D bird and a 3D baby. There is a real baby at the end, which allows them to pull off their tricks.
Joel Payne's been a 3D animator for 2 decades, working with Spielberg and Disney, to name a few.
They shot this in a very clever way. What they did is they shot the video and they panned the camera as if they were following a bird, but the bird wasn't really there when they were shooting this footage. They had to add that in with 3D elements. They also modeled a digital double of the kid.
We might give them an A, but this eagle wasn't picture perfect. First, watch the eagle's wings. All of a sudden they disappear mid-flight. One more time. Wings, then no wings. Now take a close look at the eagle's shadow. It appears, then disappears, then reappears.
It's about making false to look true to everybody.
The latest, but by no means the last viral video hoax to captivate us. Experts say even amateurs can spread their wings. All right, finally, everybody, if you really want to create an internet sensation, do the exact opposite of that old adage in showbiz coined by W.C. Fields. If you're looking to go viral, always work with children and athletes.
So these hoaxes are created on purpose a lot of times to purposely trick us. And sometimes there's no way to know right away if it's real or not. I mean, that video of the eagle coming down and trying to take that kid away got millions of views without anybody really looking really hard at that video to see if that was true or not. And I remember when this came out, this was several years ago, but I remember getting an email or somebody sharing this video with me. And I thought it was real too. It looked real. You know, to the untrained eye, if you're not going to sit there and hit pause to see if things delete and stuff like that, how would you know? You probably wouldn't know. So, okay, another type of disinformation and misinformation out there. Misinformation and disinformation are very similar. Disinformation, I think, is when people are purposely trying to mislead you. Sometimes misinformation isn't always nefarious. Okay, sometimes other people could be just as misled. And they don't know they're doing something wrong. They don't know they're spreading bad information out there. But politicians that are lying try to discredit the press. Okay? And we'll talk about the press a little bit more in the second half when we have a guest, Michael Fuente, come to talk about the importance of a free press. Now, the press, there are legitimate criticisms that we can level at the press, and we'll talk about that too. But politicians will say that the press is lying, when in all actuality, the press is put there to show that they are often the ones lying. Okay. Also, foreign countries try to influence our elections by publishing and putting out misinformation out there. These are two news articles from this week. Iran successfully hacked into the Trump campaign's email. And it was right after Joe Biden dropped out of the race. A lot of news organizations started getting email with in the hours after President Joe Biden's decision to step aside, journalists across 3 major U.S. newsrooms began getting emails from an anonymous person claiming to have tantalizing new information about the election. And a lot of that information was obtained illegally by hacking into some email accounts of some people on the Trump campaign. The news stations declined to publish that information because they felt that it might be and they were right, they felt that it might be a foreign country trying to influence our elections by hacking into somebody's email and spreading that information around. So if you remember in 2016, the same thing happened to the campaign manager of Hillary Clinton's campaign, a gentleman named John Podesta. They hacked into his email too. And when I say hacked in, they didn't really have to hack in too hard. They tricked John Podesta into giving up his password. They could just log in. They did the same thing to a member of the Trump campaign. They tricked them using something we call phishing. They send you a link which looks like you're logging into your email, but you're not. And if you looked up at the website, you would see that it's not really your email. And what happens is when you accidentally think you're logging into your email, you put in your email address and your password and you hit log in, thinking you're logging in, but in all actuality, you just gave that information to somebody else. And then now they can log in because they have your username and password. We talk about this in one of our internet classes coming up. We have a safety and security class on the internet. Called Safety and Security on the Internet, and we talk about different kind of scams like that. Phishing is a big one, okay? You might also remember that the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016 was being criticized a lot for using an email server that was unsecured. Bill Clinton, as president, was the first president to have email in the White House. So they had, early on, they had their own computers to run their email. And they kept that. And in 2016, they were criticized for it not being as secure as it should have been. That's a legitimate criticism. But here's what's funny. Hillary Clinton was using an unsecured email server. Well, nobody ever hacked into that. John Podesta, her campaign manager, was using a secure server. And somebody just tricked him into giving up his password, and they got into that, okay? So the Trump campaign, the good thing is the news organizations who received this information about the Trump campaign said, no, we're not going to publish this, even if it's true, because we think a foreign actor is trying to influence our politics and our elections. Unfortunately, what happened in 2016 was all of Hillary's emails were published publicly on WikiLeaks. So the news organizations didn't really have the ability to say, we're not going to publish that information. It was already out in the public, and anybody could just go to WikiLeaks and see that information. But Iran is one, Russia is another. Now, Russia tried and in some way succeeded in influencing the election in 2016. But just this week, our Justice Department made charges and sanctions because they discovered that Russia was spending tens of millions of dollars to have some people here in the country push information out that was misinformation and disinformation. And they were pushing those stories out on internet pages that have been around for a while already and were already had a lot of followers, like influencers do, stuff like that. They were being paid by the Russian government to do that. That is illegal. That is operating as a foreign agent. And if you're going to operate as a foreign agent in this country, you have to declare to the government that you're a foreign agent. It's not illegal. I mean, Russia can have somebody in here advocating for Russia, but the government needs to know who that is. And if you don't report that, or if you start accepting money and you're a United States citizen from Russia, then you're considered to be a Russian agent. Okay? And that is illegal. But this just came out just a couple of days ago. Biden administration seized Kremlin-run websites and charged 2 Russian state media employees to push back in what it says, and this is this is the press for you. They are saying what the Justice Department says is Russian attempts to spread misinformation. Okay. Because in all actuality, it's not until, and we talk about this towards the end, how do we know that they did this? Just because the Justice Department says it, CNN's not going to take them at their word. CNN is saying, well, the Justice Department is saying this, and it's probably a pretty good thing, but they're going to have to go through a court process to prove whether that's true or not. We just don't have the ability to arrest these people. They're charged with a crime, and then they're going to be judged by a jury of their peers. That's what they're going to be doing. Okay. So foreign countries trying to influence elections or cause distrust in this country is another type of misinformation that is pretty prevalent on the internet. Okay. Okay. So those are the different types of misinformation out here. There's probably even more types than that, but that's a pretty good overview of the type of misinformation that gets spread around. So let's talk a little bit about the impact that bad information can have on people. Okay? There is an impact on society when this information gets spread around, because a lot of times it gets believed, all right? When people are constantly exposed to bad or false information, they can become skeptical of all sources. And you hear this by people saying, all politicians lie, or I don't trust any media at all. Okay? Do all politicians lie? Technically, all people lie. Okay? It's part of our human condition. It
Born
just.
sinner.
What was that?
Born sinner.
Yeah. It's just part of life. But if we get caught lying, we should be embarrassed, right? We should stop lying. It should not be something rewarded. It should not be something that is promoted. And I've had friends post things on the internet that were easily provable false. And I'd send them, it's easy to argue with somebody on the internet, right? It's not always a good idea to argue with somebody on the internet. So if I see something that's not true, I'll send them a private message instead of, arguing with them right online. And I've said, hey, you need to take that down. That is not a true story. That is just spreading misinformation. And occasionally I've gotten replies back that say, I know, I'm just keeping it out there. Okay. And some of the reasons people do that is because they're trying to sow distrust. They're trying to sow distrust with the government. They're trying to sow distrust with the media. Okay? And they're often doing it for money reasons, for profit, or for political reasons, to get a political advantage. Okay? Another impact on society is health, public safety. Misinformation can have a direct consequence because, like vaccine misinformation, can lead to decreased vaccination rates and outbreaks of diseases that are easily preventable. There is no scientific basis that vaccines do not work. Does a vaccine get you sick sometimes? Possibly, very rarely. And it has to do with an allergy. Okay? Vaccines are not bad. Vaccines are a good thing. But if you look on the internet, you are going to find a tremendous amount of information saying that they're bad. And it can have a real effect on public safety. We've had breakouts of smallpox in this country for the first time we've had in decades, because we thought smallpox was eradicated because for the kids to go to school, they had to be vaccinated, right? If you join the military, they don't even tell you what they're vaccinating you with. Where's Fred?
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, how many vaccines did they pump into you? Did they even tell you what they were doing?
Too many to count.
Too many to count. If you are a soldier, you sit down and you're just getting shot. Okay, because it keeps you safe. It keeps you healthy. Okay. Social unrest, propaganda, and false information can incite violence and protests. We saw that with Pizzagate. Okay? Somebody really thought that children were being molested in the basement of a pizza place because of misinformation. And they went in there guns a-blazing and shooting up a pizza place. That's pretty bad, right? Just because it was bad information. It also has an impact on personal lives. Political arguments, fake, false information being spread online. We've lost friendships. Okay? We've had strained family relationships because of those things. Right? Constant exposure to misinformation can cause stress, anxiety, and confusion. People can feel overwhelmed by the amount of conflicting information out there, and then they stop trusting anybody. And that does not help. Okay? We're all in this together, and we're trying to make things better for everybody. And if we're constantly arguing about what is real and what is not real, we're not getting anywhere. Okay? It has an impact on politics. False information about candidates or voting procedures can mislead voters, undermine people's trust in the democratic process. Okay? When misinformation targets political institutions and processes, it can weaken the foundations of our democracy, including spreading false narratives about the legitimacy of elections or even the functioning of government. And this is something that Russia, Iran, and other foreign countries, who are technically our enemy, they are trying to do this. They're trying to push fake information out there to get you tired of hearing it about it, so you just go, you know what, I'm just not going to vote. That's what they want. You know what, I'm not going to trust any media anymore. Russia wants you to not trust any U.S. media. There is no free media in Russia. The government tells the press what they can do, what they can say. Our free press is in the U.S. Constitution, and our forefathers put it there to keep all of us honest, including the politicians and the government. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about strategies to identify and combat misinformation. Daniel Patrick Moynihan is credited with the quote, "You are entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts." I love that quote. Okay? How do we determine what is true and what is not true? In modern society today, with all this technology today, how do we determine what's true and what's not true? For most of us, just looking around this room, we're all either the same age or you're a little older than me, and I can remember when I was little that the news that we had was 5, 7, and 10. Right? You had maybe 3 choices. Maybe 4 if you watch Channel 9. Right, Channel 2, 5, or 7, and 9, right? That's what you got. And that's all you got.
And it was 15 minutes.
Right, yeah. It was short, you know. And if they didn't predict, you know, a thunderstorm at 10 o'clock and you heard thunder at 11, you had no way of knowing if it was coming towards you, if it was a tornado, if you had no idea, right? Some of these traditional forms of our infrastructure that we used when we were young are still legitimate today. And we need to trust those sources more than ever now that we have so much information in our face at every minute. The internet is a wonderful thing. It's a tool. And just like any tool, it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. So I'm not saying necessarily that the internet shouldn't be used. We just need to be a little bit more diligent on how we determine what is real and what is not real. Okay? Your local public library is a good place to go for help. We are nonpartisan. We are also the government. Okay? We are the state government. The free press, the importance of a free press, that is another very important thing. Okay? There are legitimate criticisms for the press, and I'm going to talk about that here in about 5 minutes. Scientific method and peer review. How do we know that vaccines are not dangerous? There is study after study, scientific study with peer review showing that that's the case. Okay? In science, you are rewarded if you prove somebody else wrong. Okay? That's what peer review means. We'll talk a little bit about that. Another one is adjudication. Just like that CNN article that we looked at a little bit ago that said, well, Justice Department charged 2 people with a crime, and they're saying that Russia is trying to influence our elections. But if you notice, the CNN article didn't say it was true. They said, well, the Justice Department says it's true. We don't know if it's true yet because it hasn't been adjudicated. It hasn't been proven. It's been accused, but it's not been proven. And this is another thing that I hear and see in politics a lot. Okay? We currently have, running the top of the presidential ticket, the first president ever to be convicted of 30-some felonies. 34 felonies. Okay? And I said I wasn't going to get partisan in here because I don't care what your politics are. Okay? But when I talk to people and I say that, are you sure you want to put your faith in somebody that has 34 felonies? Well, they say, well, Biden did this. Well, Biden hasn't been charged with any crime, nor convicted, let alone charged. Neither is Hillary Clinton. Okay? So adjudication is important. How do we know if they're guilty of something? An accusation is just that. It's an accusation. It is not proof. Librarians. Google can bring you back 100,000 answers, but a librarian can bring you back the right one. Okay? A lot of people don't realize librarians are highly educated people. If you want to be a librarian, you have to have a master's degree in library science. Plus, you have to have continuing education every year, mandated by the state, and you have to be licensed by the state to be a librarian. And if you work in a library, libraries are required to have a certain number of master degree actual librarians on staff at all times. Okay? It's not a slouch position. They don't sit around and read all day. Okay? They are educated people. Also, the library unlike some of the press, the library, and one of the reasons I love working here so much, is the library has a service motive, not a profit motive. We're not here to make money. Our motivation is not to get money from you. Our motivation is to serve you. And I spent a long time in the private sector that didn't have a service motive, they had a profit motive. And that can warp things. Okay? It's good. Our economy functions actually quite well under some aspects of capitalism having a profit motive. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, but in some cases, it can warp things. It can warp things with the press, but a library's got a service motive, not a profit motive. There's something called the Library Bill of Rights, created by the American Library Association. It states that libraries should provide access to all types of information and perspectives, regardless of the content's popularity or controversial nature. I urge you to read the entire Library Bill of Rights. It's a really interesting document. Okay? Yes?
So why are they banning books and taking them out of the library? They haven't read any of that? They don't? Is any of it in the Constitution?
Well, it is. And actually, they probably wouldn't hold up to legal scrutiny. But there's a method to how this is supposed to work. Okay? A librarian, especially like Marla Spann, our director here, right? The reason we have a library director is they should know the community. And they should provide information that is relevant to the community, and they should also not censor things, right? So whatever Marla's politics are, she's not going to say, well, let's not get books on the shelves to the other side. She's going to make sure that because she's a trained librarian. She's an educated master's of library science. She knows the importance of getting information out. But that doesn't mean pushing false information. Now, we can agree to disagree on politics, but we can also agree that pushing fake information is not helping anybody. It's helping bad actors is what it's doing. Okay? So there's a procedure that we go through here at the library when somebody comes and says they want books banned, and it's been getting a lot of news. Most of the people nowadays that are coming in, they are seeing things going around on conservative media and conservative websites, giving them lists of books and they don't really read the books. They kind of print out the list and then they walk into the library saying, I want all these books banned, right? One thing that conservatives don't like, and I am conservative on some issues and progressive on other issues, but there's one thing that conservatives believe in is they don't want the government telling them what they can do and what they can't do. So a lot of times when somebody comes in like that, what you say to them is, well, we're the government. Do you want the government telling you what you can and can't read? And most of the time they go, not really. Yeah, well, the other thing that they do is you kind of have to have one person at the library to be in charge of fielding these questions about that. And they say, well, you can, if you want to, challenge a book on the shelf. But what you have to do is you have to tell us what in the book you have a disagreement with and why. And most of the time these people are not reading these books. And if they come in with a list of 50 books, you say, well, that's fine. Just note down the pages of what you find offensive on all these 50 books. And then their eyes glaze over and then they wander off. We're not going to read 50 books that they think should be banned, right? So, but there is a way. If you want a book taken off the shelves of the library, you bring in that book. You tell us what in that book you find offensive, that why you don't think it's on there. And what happens is the director takes it to our board of directors, and they make a decision whether that book is removed or not. So, yes.
You have to read it from the beginning to the end, the book, right? The whole book that you
Well,
ban.
I guess not really, but I mean, you at least have to know what in the book you don't want.
Yeah, taken out, banned for the reasons.
Yeah.
Or what have you not. Yeah, and then there's some more talk about schools. You can go to jail, some instances of some things that you're not doing, not aware of. And the sad part about us is we don't even have a librarian in our schools.
Yeah.
To tell us what
should happen or what should not happen, you know?
Yeah, I think was that DeSantis in Florida that passed that law about possibly jailing?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so they found information. I have a hard time believing that that would stand up to legal scrutiny.
Yeah.
I mean, they can pass those laws kind of knowing that they're unconstitutional, kind of put fear, scare everybody into, oh, I don't know whether I can put this book out there or not. But I kind of feel that if somebody got fired because of that and they went to the court and said, you can't do that, I think the court would likely side with them. We have a lot of precedent in law defending libraries because we live in a free country, and the government should not be keeping you from reading things. As a matter of fact, we have filters on our computers here, so you can't look at some restricted content. And that content is not just pornography and adult sites, it also is firearms, it's also hate speech, it's violence and gambling. I mean, all of those things are filtered from our internet, okay? But because of legal precedent, and as the computer guy, I know this, if you come in here and you have a legitimate reason to see one of those websites, you come talk to me. I legally have to let you see that website. We cannot keep that from you. There was a case in, this was a school library, I think in North or South Carolina. There were two young people who were questioning their sexuality. They were gay or lesbian, I don't remember the details about the youngsters. But they were trying to access information on the computers in the library at the school about gay LGBTQ information. It wasn't adult websites, it was information about them questioning their sexuality. What was blocked at the school. So they went to the school and they said, why can't we see this? It's not pornography, it's not adult information. And the school said no. And then the ACLU sued the school and won. And they got fined like $1 million for not letting these children access that information. So some communities are banning those books and stuff like that, but I think it would hold up to legal scrutiny if somebody was fired for it. And really, yeah, hopefully this is a passing phase. Yes?
To your knowledge, has there been any books from this library banned?
Not that I'm aware of. As a matter of fact, I'm not aware that anybody's ever shown up to ask for it. I think I would have heard. We've brought it up in meetings before and we've discussed it. And I go to a professional library conference every year where it gets discussed a lot. And they give us information that I just conveyed to you on how to combat that kind of stuff. But I'm not aware. Okay. Free press in the Constitution. The inclusion of a free press in the U.S. Constitution was a deliberate decision by the Founding Fathers to protect democracy, promote transparency, and safeguard the rights of individuals to be informed and express themselves. Okay? Most people don't realize that a free press is in our Constitution. It's in the First Amendment, the same First Amendment that gives us free speech in this country. Okay? It was there for a very deliberate reason. The Founding Fathers knew it was viewed as a fundamental component of a healthy and functioning democracy where power would remain with the people and the government would be subjected to constant scrutiny. Unlike governments like Russia, if you report the same thing, they come and get you. Okay? We have a free press in this society. That's not to say that there aren't legitimate criticisms of a free press. Okay? The one that I will criticize the press about a lot is cable news, especially the 24-hour news cycle. We all lived through that. We remember when we only had 3 or 4 channels of news. And then CNN, the first cable news network, came out and it gave us 24-hour news. And I thought, wow, that's gonna be a lot, right? That's a lot of information. Okay. 24-hour news can also distort people's reality a little bit. if you were to ask most people who watch cable news on a regular basis and keep it on in the background, and we know this from surveys, they think that violence has been really increasing a lot in recent decades, when the actual opposite is true. If you look at crime rates in this country, it's been a steady decline since the most violent and bloody decade that we've ever seen outside of a civil war in this country, which was the 1960s. And most people would not say, 60s, that wasn't so bad. No. Statistically, crime was terrible, and it's been steadily going down. But what happens is sometimes we hear a lot more about crime now. When I was, because like I said, 5-7 and 2-5-7. That's it. That's all we had back then. They didn't have the time to report on the crime all over the place. Especially when I was young, it seemed like they were reporting on violence and things that happened in the white community. It was kind of white people news, right? Now, modern, was that funny, Patty? But it was kind of. I think it was.
Yeah.
It's opened up a little bit more. I mean, they still have a profit motive. If a woman goes missing and she's young and beautiful, every day. You're going to hear about that every single day. Okay? Because that's the profit motive kind of distorting things. They know it's getting viewers. Do you remember that submarine with the billionaires that went down to see the Titanic and imploded? Yeah, that same week, like a day or two before, right outside, I think it was France, a boat full of refugees capsized, and a whole bunch of people died. Did you know that? No. Did you know about the billionaires and the sub that imploded? You did. Why? Well, rich people, imploding subs, that's all profit motive stuff. Okay? And then the other criticism I'm going to have about legitimate press criticism, besides some of the profit motive of cable news. And I know I said early on, I'm not going to make this partisan. Fox News isn't really news. Okay? And sadly, Rupert Murdoch said that under oath. Because in our Constitution, right, we guarantee freedom of press. It also makes it very difficult for journalists and news organizations to be sued for libel. Okay? Because they have protected status under the Constitution. Now, if I go around town and I start saying bad things about other people, right, and I affect their job or I affect something else, I can be sued for libel, right? If I start spreading bad rumors about you. But it's very difficult to do that with the press, right? Well, Fox News was recently sued for libel over purposely promoting lies about voting machines in 2020, right? And Dominion Voting Systems sued them for $1.2 billion. And they went to court. And when they went to court, they got Rupert Murdoch on the stand. And they said, did you know that your journalists were promoting false information? And he said, yeah, I knew. He said, did you know it was fake? He said, yeah, I knew it was fake. One thing he tried to do is he tried to differentiate between commentators and journalists. He was trying to say, well, you know, Tucker Carlson, he's not a journalist, he's a commentator. So he's not subjected to the same kind of rigorous truthfulness that maybe a journalist would be. But under oath, when he was pressed about it, they said, you knew that you were lying. You know you're a news organization. And under oath, Rupert Murdoch said, we're not a news organization. We are entertainment. Exactly what he said. So, sometimes commentators that are on news channels can push things that aren't necessarily true, and they're going to hide behind this. I'm not a journalist, I'm a commentator type thing. Okay? All right, so I am very fortunate to have a guest here today to talk to you a little bit about the importance of a free press in our society. Michael Puente is a veteran journalist with experience in newspapers, magazines, radio, and television. He's won several awards, and his work has been featured in the Post Tribune in Northwest Indiana, the Chicago Sun-Times, WBEZ Radio in Chicago, NPR, National Public Radio, the BBC, WTTW, Lakeshore Public Media, and others. He has served as a rotating guest for Chicago Tonight Latino Voices from 2020 to 2023. He's also the past president of the Indiana chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. He is currently the president of the Chicago Headline Club Board, the largest chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. And Michael Puente also grew up right here in East Chicago, just a few blocks away. So if you can give a nice welcome to Michael Puente.
Good to see you. All right, yes, that's right. In fact, I grew up like maybe 2 blocks. And I don't get to East Chicago a lot. My father-in-law still lives here. But I was telling a story to my wife recently where when I was little, I used to go to Franklin School right next door. Well, at the time it was called Franklin, now it's Washington, I think, right here. And I was a little boy here, and after class, I was in kindergarten or first grade, I decided not to go home. And me and my buddy had lunch right in the middle of the two little, by the library on the side, you see the two little sort of windows or whatever. We're eating there, and my parents pulled up, Mike, where you in? I'm like, I just didn't come home. So yeah, I grew up a few blocks away from here. And you know, I covered East Chicago for a long time with the Post Tribune of Northwest Indiana. I've written for the Sun-Times. I work right now with WBEZ in Chicago. Has anybody ever heard of that station? No? Well, we're a public radio station. What that means is we don't air commercials. A lot of our funding comes from members, grants, a little bit from the federal government, and I'll get into that a little bit because some people will say, well, then maybe you're bought and paid for. Not really. I'll explain that a little bit. We're if you've heard of PBS, we're part of the umbrella of PBS. WTTW Channel 11, you've heard of that. You've also heard of, I'm sure, Lakeshore Public Radio, that's in Maryville. I've done some work with them. And I've been a journalist now since about 1990, 1992. So I've covered everything in print, radio, TV. But that doesn't, I mean, it makes me an expert a little bit, but you know, the media landscape today is so vastly different. You know, so many things. How do you trust it? So many things come up. And I kind of go back. There's a lot of things I want to kind of touch on. I mean, I don't have any prepared statements. I don't have a speech because I wasn't sure, you know, who was I going to be speaking in front of. But we'll just have sort of a conversation. Most of you guys have been around for a little bit, but even still, I mean, a couple of weeks ago when Joe Biden decided to not seek re-election, I was asked among a lot of reporters, not just locally but nationwide, we want to hear from voters. What do they have to say? And I'm not trying to make this political, but you go talk to people. I went to a few diners, one in Maryville, one in I think Portage, and sometimes you just want to grab, you know, I let people talk. It's not really a conversation because I don't get into debates with anybody because it's not really about what I think. I want to hear from them. But oftentimes they may say things that is this, that is just clear misinformation. Just where's all this information getting from? Where's all this misinformation getting from? A lot of it has to do just with the breakdown of media. Now, I'm not really sure if you're aware of everything that's going on. I'm sure sometimes you picked up the Times of Northwest Indiana, correct? The paper, the Post Tribune, how thin it is now. The Tribune is thin. WBEZ, which I work out of, we're based at Navy Pier. We're one of the largest public radio stations in the country. We also own now the Chicago Sun-Times. Do you remember the Sunday papers, how heavy they were? You get all that news for $1.50 now. It's a lot more money than that. Advertising revenues have gone down. Why? Because a lot of people get in digitally now, online, and the revenue that's brought in that way, it just isn't the same as, say, the print ad. And it's forced newspapers and other media to just have a different funding model. When the internet first just started, 1995-ish, 1996, everybody rushed out to get a website. You know, the Times, the Post Tribune. I was working at the Post Tribune at the time, and we had our website, but people were giving their stories out for free. And people were like, well, why if I go down to the store, Dino's or Manuel's, Dino's still around? Dino's not around anymore. It was a malt shop on Main Street. You buy a paper for 25 cents, 50 cents. But if you look online, it's for free. Like, well, why am I paying for it? And as the years went by, some newspapers decided, well, we need to make money off our stories. We're paying these reporters and editors and photographers to get you the information. So now they have digital subscriptions. So you can get your stories online, you get them on your phone. I mean, when's the last time you've actually picked up a newspaper? Not reading a story on your phone. It's been a while even for me. I read most of my stories on my phone or on my computer. When's the last time you picked up a paper? This morning? I still like it because I get the ink on my fingers. I kind of like that. But it's a little different because I got to put my glasses on. You gotta see it's hard to see the print. And oftentimes, it depends on when you get the newspaper, because sometimes the stories can already feel kind of old, like a day old already. I've always felt newspapers kind of should go back. Remember, newspapers used to be an afternoon newspaper? You would get the paper around 1 or 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Kids would come home, get the newspaper, and start delivering them. It was that day's papers. I'm going to digress a little bit here because when I was really, really young, like coming out of college, I interviewed for a paper in Muncie called the Evening Star Press. And they were an afternoon newspaper. And the day I went to go interview them, it was the day, this is kind of weird for me to bring this up, but that's the day Jeffrey Dahmer got murdered in jail. But I was looking at the story that afternoon, it was already printed, you know? So by the evening, people had that stories in the TV stations. And so maybe newspapers should go back to being an afternoon newspaper, so you have more that day's news. And also, we've also all grown up on Channel 2, Channel 5, Channel 7, the TV stations. They're hurting too. Why? Because people are cutting the cord, you know? People aren't getting cable news, they're getting streaming. And TV, news, newspapers, radio, I hate to say it, we're all dinosaurs. We are. We're trying to hang on, we're hoping people still value the news, but right now they're getting it off of Facebook, you know, from whatever website, or TikTok. TikTok's this new thing. Anybody on TikTok here? I mean, here's the thing. Yeah. For me, and I tell my kids this, you can't, in my line of work, as I'm getting older too, you can't be afraid of technology. You gotta just keep evolving or you miss out on a lot of things. So if you feel like TikTok's not for me, it's for my grandkids, get on there and try it. It's funny. You can see funny cat videos. I like seeing people fight, so I see fight videos. I'm not gonna lie. You know, or there's a lot of food videos on there, people making stuff. You can get recipes and stuff. That's how my wife, who grew up in East Chicago too, that's how she gets some recipes. I saw it on TikTok. So, you know, there's always going to be something new. Never be afraid of it. Just tackle it. you'll impress your grandkids. But what it's done is that the sort of the newspapers and what they call legacy media, radio and TV, what's happened, the downsizing is that we just don't have, people just aren't used to picking up the news. There was a time in our country, who's ever heard of that scandal called Watergate?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, right?
Yeah.
So that spurred so many young people to want to go into journalism. They wanted to become investigative reporters. There's that movie called The Post, about the Washington Post. Great movie. But it's not on the Watergate scandal. It's about the Vietnam War, the Vietnam Papers. Remember that the Vietnam Papers, where they digged it up, and it was just about the government's role in perpetuating the Vietnam War. Then they go into a little bit of the Watergate scandal. Of course, all the President's Men, that great movie, Woodward and Bernstein. But it's because Americans had a baseline of what was acceptable for politicians to do and what was not acceptable. And the media was supposed to be there to protect. Now, we're just so polarized that if you don't like a story, it's fake news. People like that term, fake news. Somebody really promoted that term, fake news, and it's hurt media, because there's really only one job that is protected in the U.S. Constitution. Is that freedom of the press? Freedom of press is written in the First Amendment. It should be respected. It should be a line you don't cross. But we know now a lot of people have crossed it. They don't respect the news anymore. And a lot of it's on us too, when we let ourselves become too polarized, too biased. So how do you fight that? I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you some advice on how to do it, but it's not a fail-safe. All right? It's not, even I get duped sometimes. There's this new thing called AI, artificial intelligence, where you can get duped by that, where they can get somebody sounds like somebody saying something, President Obama or Hillary Clinton or even Donald Trump, where they'll get their voice, put it a video, and you think they're saying something. And because you don't like this politician, you want it to be true. It has to be true. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm no fan of Donald Trump, but even he's been subject to that, and he is already saying enough bombastic things. He doesn't need more, But you got to ask yourself, when you see a critical story about somebody, anybody, now, and I'm going to try to get away for this information to be, let's get away from the presidential election. That is polarizing to everybody. I get it. But like for your everyday usage, if you see a story that's negative, ask yourself, why do you want it? Why do you agree with this article? Why do you want it to be true? Is it because you're disdain or your dislike for this one person? For Mayor Johnson in Chicago, Mayor Copeland in East Chicago. I mean, some of the decisions here in East Chicago affect you a lot more than on the state or federal level. You should be worrying about, I worry more about the downsizing of newspapers, about the stories that aren't getting reported. Why is your water bill going up? Why is your school tax bill going up? Why is the sanitary district bill going up? Why are they having having to borrow more money? And interest rates are, why is this road project, I know Indianapolis Boulevard took forever to get fixed.
Tell me about it.
Well, who's there to ask those questions? But let's say it's a negative story about somebody. See, I knew something was going on. But who's telling you that? Who's giving you that information? I was trying to come up with an analogy, so I was talking to my wife as I was coming in here. I think this is the analogy I'm going to try to use. Now, let's see. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. So, do you know this woman? Well, you know her?
She's my sister.
She's your sister, okay? So, if your sister told you something, your sister came up and said, what's your name?
Kathy.
Kat, what's your name?
Paula.
Paula. Kathy comes up to you, Paula, guess what? I just saw a big explosion by the BP Amico. Flames everywhere. And what would you tell her? Would you believe her? Yeah, kind of. Or you think she's like loopy? Yeah, like, but you would kind of believe her, right? She's a trusted source. Now, do you know this lady?
Just met her today.
What if she came up to you and said, Paula, I saw this big flame coming out of BP's direction. There's a fire. Like, say you bumped into her to Walgreens. You really didn't know her. Would you believe her? Would you be like?
I might be more hesitant.
The only reason I come up with that kind of analogy is because think of the news sources that are out there. Where are you getting your information from? You know, I think everybody. Now, I work for WBEZ, which is part of National Public Radio. You may not have heard of it, but the people who have heard of it, we have a lot of listeners, a lot of fans. People trust it. They love it. If you want to listen to a little bit, 91.5. It's an acquired taste for everybody. We don't talk fast. We explain to you the stories. We have news breaks. We have 1 minute news nuggets, but we also have 4 minute stories, conversations. We think we tell you both sides. Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. And we have some nice things in there about music, Spanish music, hip hop, whatever. Different shows. But I tell people when they come up to me, oh, we love your coverage. But I'm like, well, just don't listen to us. You know, you need to have a healthy media diet. Just like your diet at home can't be always, every once in a while, I mean, I don't know if you guys are eating McDonald's still, but like, you know, you want healthy stuff. You want healthy stuff, and sometimes every once in a while, binge on pizza or, you know, chilaquiles or so, whatever, somebody makes something. But you want a healthy diet. You just don't want one thing, because that one thing could probably hurt you, you know, especially if it's your favorite thing. So I would say, as much as you might love ABC News, Times of Northwest Indiana, some of you might still listen to WJOB or WLTH. I listen to WLTH or V103. You got them, WVON. I listen to WVON. I like to hear a lot of different viewpoints. Michael was talking about Fox News. I look at Fox News. Why? Because I find myself with it. I will say this about Fox News. Who looks at Fox News?
I look at it to laugh.
So
I've been listening to WBEZ for over 25 years, and that's the only news that I've been listening to.
we love you for that.
I mean, because it's probably as truthful as it can get. I mean, like you said, you get both sides, so you can make a real informed decision on what you think is really happening.
Right.
So, you know, if you really like to listen to news, I'm not a news junkie. I'm not, a CNN person. Because a lot of that deals with personality. But if you really just want the news, WBEZ is.
I would say that Fox News, when they're doing the reporting, the basic reporters out there, they do a good job. It's the opinion shows that really go overboard with their opinions. But I do watch it to just stimulate the brain, because if you're always listening to things that you agree with, or maybe not agree with, but it doesn't, make you as angry as Fox News, sometimes you need that just to jar yourself. And I also look at it I've taught journalism at Indiana University Northwest and Calumet College. And I tell them it's not what's also being reported, it's how they're reporting and what they're leaving out. That's really the most troublesome aspect. What if I was a news reporter on the Titanic and you're getting your dispatches. Let's just pretend you're hearing on the radio. We're on a really big cruise ship, one of the biggest in the nation. It's on its maiden voyage. We're going through the Atlantic Ocean. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning. People are running up and down the promenade and screaming and shouting, and that's it. You'd be like, well, what's going on? Sounds like a good time. Oh yeah, I left out the part that we just hit an iceberg and we're sinking. I missed that part. I left out that, Jack is in the water floating while Rose is on the door, where she has room for him, but she doesn't give it up. I left out the parts. So sometimes it isn't the parts I'm telling you about, it's what I'm leaving out. It's the context of what they're talking about. I told you I would be going away from the presidential election, but that's what everyone's talking about, right? Right now, even ABC News, NBC, CBS, even NPR, I think we're being unfair to Kamala Harris. Why? And I'm not trying to be a proponent of her. I'm just saying the things Trump is allowed to say and get away with, no matter how lunacy it can sound. If she was just to say the exact same words he said, she would be run out of town. Some of the things he was asked about, how would he pay for childcare, and he started talking about drilling for oil and everything. What if she said that? She wouldn't be the nominee anymore. So it feels like they're holding her to the proper line of questioning for credibility and to get information on her, but they're not doing the same for him. And that's my only problem. Every time he says something that is superlative, one of the worst is, or one of the best, stop him there. Like, why? Where do you get that information? Okay, let's get away from the presidential election, because it's gonna get everybody in trouble, especially me. So, but just in your everyday life, things about taxes, things about road construction, who's getting contracts, where are you getting that information from? It's getting harder and harder because so many newspapers and media outlets are downsizing. And what would happen if there was no Times of Northwest Indiana anymore? What would happen if there was no more Post Tribune or the Chicago Tribune? The Chicago Tribune used to be the behemoth of the local media landscape. Why? Because whatever the Chicago Tribune reported, even if you were a die-hard viewer of ABC 7, Channel 7, a lot of the news came from the Chicago Tribune. They said, I would always say newspapers set the media menu for that day. Let's just face it, they did. Not to say there aren't any great TV reporters. I work alongside great radio reporters, but newspaper reporters, for me, are real journalists. They don't have to worry about their makeup. They don't have to worry about how they sound. They don't have to worry how they look. They just got to get the story, and they do. And I was one for about 13 years, and I've loved writing. But if out there right now, it almost feels like the Wild West, with people. I covered the DNC in Chicago. I wasn't in the United Center where all the glitzy people were. I was covering the protests, and they were getting heated. And you see some people there who were quote unquote with the press. You're supposed to have these official credentials for covering the DNC. You see the main reporters doing that, radio, TV, whatever. But then you have these other people who seem like they were just playing cosplay. They were out there, big scientist press, and they feel like they were more like agitators than trying to give you the news. And, there's nothing that can stop them from doing that. There's nothing that would prevent them from being out there and just, saying whatever side they want to say. But you just got to be mindful of where you're getting the news from. There's so many, just like people who try to steal your identity. They'll send you a bill that's from NIPSCO, it looks legit, or from your bank. You click on it, next thing you know, you got wiped out. You've got websites out there that claim to be from the New York Times or the Washington Post, and these bombastic headlines. You just gotta watch out for that. I would say the telltale signs are for like a story that may not be, well, here's the thing. If you hear a story, read a story, see a story, mostly online, something that is, you know, even if you like it, look at who's the publication. And you could easily open another screen on your computer and Google it. Am I saying things that are still, am I starting to get into an area that people are unfamiliar with? If you're on a computer, you can open another browser to Google, look up the publication's name, and see who's funding them. A lot of times, it could just be a legitimate news outlet. Sometimes it could be, well, this is funded from a conservative think tank, you know, or yeah, Russia. You know, and right now, I don't know if you've heard the news in the last couple of days, there's 2 journalists from Russia Today that were arrested and charged with being spies. I'm a little leery about them, a little worried about having really looked into it too much, because there are legitimate reporters working for Russia Today, but they are funded by the Russian government. Are they spies, or are they just journalists doing work? What if a reporter from PBS was doing work in Russia?
Well, you know what, we looked at that article before you got here.
Okay.
And one thing that we brought up, which was interesting, CNN had a little blurb on it, and it, you know, CNN was very
cautious,
and they said, well, this is what the Justice Department says.
Yeah.
That this is what they did. They weren't saying they did this. They're like, no, this is an accusation of the Justice Department. They purposely made it a little, yeah.
Because now we do have journalists incarcerated in Russia. You know, I think they just
got
released
one back. Yeah,
just got one back, right? So are they spies? I mean, we're in a country that's supposed to be open. I mean, how much spying can you do? We have an open society and a free press. I got to be careful with that. In that I'm head of the Chicago Headline Club, or like an advocacy group for journalists. So I'm going to look more into these reporters who were arrested. I'm not going to defend them at this point, but I'm not going to defame them either to say they did what the government is saying they were doing. It almost feels like James Bondish. Are they looking up like top secret information, or are they just reporting things that, okay, you may not agree with? We all know that there are some actors out there, foreign actors, who are trying to sway our election one way or another, but I think we're kind of doing a good job on that too. So I don't want to keep going further. Does anybody have any questions for me? I know I kind of rambled them, just trying to make it as coherent as possible. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes.
How's that? Yeah. Thank you. My question is, I'm going to go back to this Trump thing. How was he allowed to avoid a gag order? How was he allowed to say all these, these untruths about his opponents? How does he continue to be allowed to do that?
I think it's because we allow it. Society has decided he has enough support out there. His support is pretty significant. It may not be 50% of the country, but it is significant. And they're not just supporters, let's just say they're worse than Packer fans. You know, they're real. I'm just saying they're rabid. You've seen them, MAGA. I'm a Bears fan. But I just feel that let's face it, the judicial system, we've never been through something like this. This is like our tornado that we're facing every day, something new. Even today, they postponed his sentencing in the 34 counts, felony counts, until after the election. And if he wins, those aren't going to. So it's because of his support that he has, and not only support of his people who support him as a candidate, people in government who support him, who are allowing that. Because anybody else would talk that way to a judge, would be held in contempt. If you and me had even a traffic ticket, and we go see the judge in East Chicago or Hammond, and you talk back to them, you're gone. You're gonna be spending a few hours or days in jail. So it's society who elects it.
That's the other angle he keeps playing that. Well, I was the former president, so I got these presidential credentials to be able to say stuff that a normal person can't say. And he keeps throwing that up. Because he's a con man. He's always been a con man. And a con man and a grifter knows how to play on people. So he plays on the fact that I was the former president, and I still don't think I lost. So I should have presidential stuff, like he tried to get the presidential immunity stuff. And like he said, politicians and the courts went along with it and said, well, maybe he should have immunity. When no president ever had immunity before.
The lady, the Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Okay, one of the things, and not to go into the politics itself, but there's two terms that he often uses, bloodbath. We can take that
In a lot of different ways.
in a
And he
lot
wants
of
you to.
different ways.
As a threat.
Also, another term that he uses is, now I forgot, I lost track, bloodbath, and there will be no more elections. How I mean, it's not just election year, but what do you mean for us as a United States citizens in the race to vote? What do you mean we're not having another election? So there's a lot of things that we could take a positive
Yeah.
or negative.
You know, and on top of that, those are good points, because then when he's asked about it, or his people are asked about it, then they have to explain what he meant.
Right.
And, you know, what Kamala Harris, she says what she means. This guy has to be explained by someone else what he meant to say.
Well, I was
What he
gonna
meant to
say that. If you talk to his supporters, they will say, well, you know what he means by that. We're gonna weed out, elections that are fraudulent. It's this whole thing, election integrity. When there was no problem with the election. What's that? I don't know who said this, but if you tell a lie more often enough, it becomes a truth.
He said it.
Yeah. Or I don't know who said it.
You believe yourself.
Yeah. And or I could quote Seinfeld, where they say it's only if it's not a lie if you believe in it. George Costanza, I think, said that. So for Seinfeld fans here, which I'm one, but I'm not just trying to make light of it. It's because, like you said, it's his handlers, his supporters will say, oh, you know what he means by that. We're gonna clean up the election fraud, and you won't have to worry about that. He will say everything and anything to get reelected.
Or they'll say, well, he didn't really mean it. He didn't mean, when he says something really wrong, oh, he didn't really mean it, or he wouldn't really do it.
Well, he said it.
I've got granddaughters, 17 years old, but when they were 16, they're all on TikTok and everything, okay? I didn't understand the word influencer, okay, getting likes and this and that.
Yeah.
And things that they heard about the COVID, I couldn't convince them of what the real truth was. And no, I wasn't on TikTok other than to dance with them. The news, which I had been brought up to think about, was conveyed by journalists, not by commentators or influencers. So I feel that gap of technology has us so crazy, because in my lifetime, I believe journalists. Automatically, I'm not gonna believe an influencer or a commentator, because they don't have the credentials.
They don't have the track record. Right. That's what I'm saying. Somebody that comes up to you with information, you're more likely to believe them as opposed to a stranger.
Right.
And most of the stuff now is being put out there by people you're not familiar with, or organizations, or even that term influencer, I always took it to mean just somebody, they have people who kind of promote products and everything, but it's not that. It's people who are actually trying to sway you in a certain way of thinking, much like a news reporter, but not really they're already from a position of being biased. And that's what you gotta be careful with. I do wanna address one thing, National Public Radio, PBS, we are funded in part by the federal government. Now, you might say, some people will come, I think Michael wanted me to address that. Some people will say, well, that makes you biased. But I keep wondering, like, well, biased for who? Republicans or Democrats? Because there's so many of them. Are we protecting the administration who's currently in the White House, or does it change? I feel if you listen to the programming enough, you will see, at least for the news or politics, it's balanced. It's balanced. The nature shows, I mean, they're telling you about global climate change in a scientific way. But the funding, the federal funding affects actually the smaller PBS stations than the bigger ones. WTTW is one of the largest in the country, Channel 11, as I'm talking about. Lakeshore, they're smaller. So let's say they get their federal funding pulled, it's gonna have a greater effect on their budget and to produce programming than say a TTW or a WBEZ. See, we're all kind of spoiled here in East Chicago because we're in the Chicago media market. Huge, one of the largest in the country, in the world. Let's say you go down to, let's say you're in Warsaw, Indiana, or Southern Indiana, where there's not much. There may be a small public radio station supporting that rural area. So you go driving somewhere, let's put on the local station. Well, your kids now just put on streaming stuff now. So but before, in the old days, you would pick a radio station, public radio station, it might be a small station. So
You wanted to ask one.
yeah.
What do you know? Sirius, FM, or AM? Or?
FM.
Huh?
FM.
I've been nice.
91.5 FM, but we're also
What other
online.
stations do you communicate with? I mean, because some of them have like a mother station and that station.
That's my station.
They're an NPR affiliate.
Yeah.
And I am a member, and I have been for a long time. And it is Balanced News. And I remember, I think this was during the Obama administration when they were accusing public radio of being biased. Some people did research and found that public radio has more conservatives on than progressives when they want to interview, and they're still non-biased and very good information.
Yes.
What I do not understand is how Trump controls the Republican Party. What is your comment on that?
What was your question?
That Trump control
the Republican Party?
The Republican Party, how is that?
Well, usually the president or the person running, who used to be president, they kind of are your party leader. And for better or worse, he has kind of, the GOP isn't the way we used to remember. You may not have agreed to everything with Republican or Republican positions, but you knew they weren't trying to damage democracy. You maybe you weren't a fan of Reagan, but you knew he wasn't trying to vilify anybody. Nobody, at least during my lifetime, I don't remember people calling Dems or Republicans enemy of the people, communists now. Now they're calling Democrats communists. We're just straight up communists and we want to destroy democracy. That's you call somebody something, they turn it. It's really that almost Sandlot mentality when you were a kid. Oh, you're short enough. You're short enough. I mean, they just bounce it back at you.
So I know you are, but what am I defense?
Yeah, right. So it's like, how are we gonna overcome that as a society? Now, a lot of people think that we've been around our country 230 years maybe. That's not a long time. We're still a baby, I think. There's nothing guaranteed that it's going to continue. So.
Okay, last question, Barbie.
Yeah, Barbie.
My name's not Barbie.
Thank you, Barbie.
Was it Francis?
But anyway, Francis. Okay, one of the things is we go back to not that we're not going to go into the real politics issues here, but we were brought up, Democrats for the poor, Republicans for the rich, and someone that's stigmatized. So we're not looking at the democracy as what's going on and whatnot. It's like, I'm just gonna vote Democrat because I'm a minority, or I'm just gonna vote Republican because I got money. And that's something that has stuck with us. So the intel of it all is ignored because that's something we're wired to. Just
Yeah, that had been sort of, or like Republicans were for more business, industry, Democrats were more for the more working class people. That's historically has been, but now I think a lot of things have been turned upside down now, because now you even got poor white people in Appalachia supporting Trump. I mean, how did they connect with a billion? You got union people supporting Trump, who was a union buster.
AC.
Yeah, I just want to make a statement. A lot of people, I don't want to sound like a communist or fascist, but a lot of people don't know there's an underbelly to all of this that happened. The anarchists, this anarchist group that's multi-millionaires and billionaires, they were going to go behind, go look into it, you see, they were going to go behind, what's the guy named Cruz? Cruz wasn't a good candidate. So they latched on to Trump, just like
Ted Cruz?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The fundamentalists and the religious people. The anarchists, what their theory is that they've been around for years, if you go check. They want to destroy the government and reboot it. So they looked at Trump as what they call the something idiot. The government is a
Useful idiot?
Useful idiot. It's a government spying term. The Cohen guy brought it up, the lawyer guy. That's a real term. They seen Trump as the useful idiot, so they said, wait, we're not showing me this guy, because he's all about money. If we back him with money, he'll help us destroy the government. They want him to go in and mess everything.
Okay.
You know, before we wrap it up,
yeah, go ahead, yes, please.
I just want to say thank you for letting me talk to you. I don't want you to feel like I'm an outsider. And a lot of times when you tell people your background, you know, they say all the really great things about you, and then they leave out the part of, I'm just like one of you. I grew up here. I could be probably friends with your kids, for all I know. But I want to say thank you, because this is a rarity too, because if I was talking before Republicans, they would probably throw me out the room, because they don't believe in journalists anymore. They don't believe in it. So I want to thank you for hearing me, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so I got a little bit more to go through. I know Michael Puente because we had friends in common. When I was young, I had two roommates who worked at the Post-Tribune. Michael Gard, a photographer, who still works for the newspaper. You should still see his names under the pictures. And Mark Davis, another journalist, who now is at the Powell Tribune. I just saw him last week. He was in town. And I got to tell you, I was a computer guy at the time, but when they would get off work, and they would have Michael McCardle and some of the other journalists from the newspaper come over, to have a bunch of journalists come over when newspapers were still going strong was so cool to see. It was so much fun. They'd be talking about stories, and they all had pagers, and then every once in a while, all their pagers would go off at the same time. They'd be like, oh my gosh, a plane crashed in Lowell, and they'd all run out the door. It was a magical time. And I was so jealous. I thought, oh, if I could go back to school again and be a journalist, that would just be so interesting. And then the internet hit. And then I stopped saying that. Because really, it did. It decimated a lot. But it's those institutions that are still legitimate, trustworthy institutions. Nobody's perfect. But if a legitimate journalist or a legitimate news outfit, like the big ones that you know, ABC and NBC and CBS and even CNN, if they get something wrong, they correct the record. They do get things wrong now and again. So if you see something online that you don't know if it's true or not, you do go to the internet, and in the classes, I told you that we're going to be doing a string of internet classes. We're going to teach you how to use a browser. We're going to teach you how to use the internet and all that stuff. We'll teach you how to get online to get that information, but pay attention to the sources that the information is coming from. Okay? If it's coming from a lot of sketchy looking websites, be wary, because there are bad actors and people out there trying to trick us, particularly to influence elections, to harm our trust in these institutions, when in actuality we have to have more trust in these institutions than ever before. So thank you very much, Mike.
All right, thank you.
And have a good one.
All right,
and
thank you, everybody.
I followed him on Facebook for his reporting in GNC, and I found that to be fascinating too.
Take care.
Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about, we're almost done here, but about combating information, okay? And this is something Michael Puente brought up. We must be careful not to believe things simply because we want them to be true. Nobody can fool you as easily as you can fool yourself, okay? So first of all, when it comes to combating misinformation, the truth does not require your participation to be true. Bullshit does. Right? That requires your participation. We all share things wrong sometimes. I've done it too. I've seen things that were false that I wanted to be true, and I shared it. But just like these good news organizations, if you find yourself incorrect, correct the record. Don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution. Also, be respectful to others. It's very easy to argue with people online because you're not looking them in the face. You would have more respect for somebody if you were sitting down and discussing something with them face to face. You have a personal connection there. It's too easy for us to go on Twitter or Facebook and make comments that are rude, okay? Because we don't see that person. But we have to remember that when other people spread misinformation, that they're not necessarily doing it in bad faith. They could be just misinformed like we all have been at times. Okay, so being respectful, think critically. We'll talk a little bit about that, and fact check your sources before you share it. If you see something that looks really tantalizing, just Google it. Reminder, Google has everything. The fake stuff, the real stuff, the satire, even when it's not even labeled satire, like birds aren't real, right? And everything in between. So, Fred.
Well, being a seasoned veteran already, I know I get extra credit.
Yes, you do.
For the class, but for all of the sites for which we talked about, you know, especially, you know, I really was unaware with the fact checking.
Yeah.
And like when we were just speaking earlier, as far as the library is concerned, I find for the most part I learn a lot more listening than I do speaking, and I find in doing so, I can't argue a fact if I can't hear what you're saying.
Right.
So I need to know. So when we were talking about the library and having all the books in order to make sure, you know, okay, I can't say this. Okay, well, let's look in this aisle, then we can find it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's very true. You know.
So Fred took my computer classes before, and I think what he's talking about is we do have a class called Social Networking, and we have another class called Safety and Security on the Internet, where we talk about some of these fact-checking websites. But I have that in this, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so when it comes to combating fake information, these are very good sources. Okay? PolitiFact.com, FactCheck.org, which is the Annenberg Political Fact Check. Snopes.com has been around for a long time. Snopes.com specializes in viral hoaxes. Okay, so if you see something like the eagle, the baby getting carried away with the eagle, Snopes.com would be a good one for that. The Associated Press has their own fact check. Okay, traditionally used for politicians, the AP fact check. Also, Wikipedia.org is one that a lot of people criticize because anybody in the world can go on and edit it. Anybody. You can, I can. But here's the thing, it's an online encyclopedia that anybody can edit. So you think, how can that possibly be true? How can that possibly be correct, right? Well, first of all, it cites its sources, okay? And if there is something said on Wikipedia, it tells you that a citation is needed. And don't necessarily believe it, for one. For two, research has shown that it is more reliable than the encyclopedias that are on the shelf. For a couple of reasons. For one reason is, once it's printed in a book, and stuck on the shelf. If you got something wrong, it's wrong on the shelf. And it's really hard to correct that bad information that accidentally got put into the World Book Encyclopedia. But this can get edited all the time. Another thing is, there was a female scientist online who said that she would often go to the internet to ask colleagues to help her with difficult problems in her field. So she'd put a question out there to her colleagues. Hey, I'm having this difficult problem. Can you help me with that? And she said that she wasn't getting any responses back. So then as an experiment, what she did is she'd post her question, and then she'd pretend to be somebody else and give a wrong answer to her question. And then everybody was that fast to tell that guy why it was wrong. Okay? So that's the thing with Wikipedia, especially, people love to tell you when you're wrong. So if you put something on Wikipedia, there's going to be a bunch of people right there saying, wrong! They just love to tell you when you're wrong. Okay? But a couple of things I want to talk about combating misinformation, about thinking critically, okay, is beware of what we call logical fallacies. Sometimes things seem logically correct, but they're not necessarily logically correct. One big one is correlation and causation. Okay? Sometimes things look like one thing causes the other, but in fact, it's not a correlation, it's not a causation, it's just a correlation. And I thought that the Simpsons did a really good job of explaining the difference between causation and correlation as being a logical fallacy.
Not a bear in sight. The Bear Patrol must be working like a charm.
That's specious reasoning, Dad.
Thank you, honey.
By your logic, I could claim that this rock keeps tigers away.
Oh, how does it work?
It doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
It's just a stupid rock.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see any tigers around here, do you?
Lisa, I want to find your rock.
That is a perfect example of specious reasoning. That just because it looks like something causes the other, it doesn't all. Sometimes it's just a correlation and not a causation at all. Okay? The scientific method and peer review is how we know that vaccines help more than hurt. Okay? Because the scientific method and peer review means that you have to present to a scientific journal proof of an experiment that all of the scientific colleagues in the community can reproduce to keep you honest. Okay? That's what peer review is called, right? And it does an exceptionally good job of teaching us what is true and what is not true, because the scientific community is invested in, if you can prove a famous scientist wrong, if you can take a famous scientist who makes a paper and says, oh, well, this is true because of this experiment, if you can prove that person wrong, then your status goes up, your pay goes up, okay? And that's a good thing. What counts is not what sounds plausible. It's not what we would like to believe, not what one or two witnesses claim, but only what is supported by hard evidence, rigorously and skeptically examined. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Okay? And then the last thing I want to talk about is adjudication. Okay? Because we're a little over on time. But this is when a court charges you with a crime and your peers from the community, a jury, gets convened to hear both sides of the argument all day, every day. Now you've been in a court a couple of times as a juror for jury duty, and it's a fascinating thing, right? And I remember it always kind of baffled me, even in cases that were very controversial, like O.J. Simpson or some of these other cases like that. But you have somebody that's charged with a crime, right? They go in, and a jury of their peers hears the defense every day, all day long, and they hear the prosecution give both arguments all day long, and that's the only thing the jury is doing there all day long. Yet members of the public afterwards say, oh, well, I don't believe that, I still think he's guilty. Or I don't believe that, I still think he's innocent. Well, you weren't there all day sitting there listening to both sides of the argument. That's what adjudication is, right? And there's a reason she's blindfolded, because law should apply to everybody equally. No matter your social status. How you doing, Mr. J? Your social status, your race, your wealth, any of that. Justice should be blind. A person is innocent until they're proven guilty. So especially when it comes to politics. Okay? Somebody says so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that. They're innocent until they're proven guilty. If you ever see an image that you're not sure is true or not, Google has a reverse image search. And we learn that in the classes. You can take any image that you find on the internet or on Facebook, and you can search Google for the image. Not what's the text of the image, but the actual image. And sometimes it'll show you. If I had a patron come in and they had a friend on Facebook they felt they were getting scammed on. You know, he was a man about my age, and some young 20-something attractive girl friended him on Facebook and was asking him for money. And he got fooled. Unfortunately, probably was an old Russian guy, not a young attractive woman. So anyway, what I did was I said, well, show me this picture of this person. And I took that picture and I threw it into this Google image search, and it came up with the Instagram account of this young woman who was from Singapore, didn't even speak English. Somebody stole her picture, made a fake account. But see, this is one way we can determine what is true and what is not true on the internet. And we do show you this in class, how to do a Google reverse image search. And that is all I have. We're a little bit over. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And does anybody have any questions before we go? We'll stay away from the politics. AC? Okay, thank you very much. All right, have a good night. And then, oh, also, if anybody wants to be signed up for the next 2 classes, Larissa is here, and she can take your information. Is there anybody here who needs a certificate for library continuing education units? No, LeBray does, but I know where she's at, so I'll go find her. And that's it, okay. And I will see you later. We're going to a football game tonight.
Yes, we are.
She goes,
It's nice to meet you too.
We go to football.
Yeah, it's fun.
There.
And thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you for
I'll see you on
dropping
Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
it's nice meeting you guys.
Baby's got off work. She's not working.
Good.
Good
Hi,
to see
sir.
you,
How you
sir.
doing? Good to see you, sir. This is my mom. Mom, this is
Hi. Nice to meet you. Thank you for your
Hi,
service.
Pablo.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, sir. It's good to see you again.
Yes, ma'am.
I know, you paid your dues. Well, good for you, and good for us to have you.
How's everything otherwise? Going well?
Oh, yeah, everything's going really well. Yeah, very happy. You going to be in classes again? Or?
I'm thinking about it. Actually, yesterday I took the impact exam for a position as the youth development specialist for Cook County. So I'm waiting to get the results for that.
Oh, great. All right, good.
Have you worked
Break
with any
away.
of the people in the